All right, so are you ready to explore some seriously deep stuff today? We're diving into the yogic perspective on life, death, and what might actually lie beyond.
Sounds intense.
It is. Our main source is this text simply titled Death Part4.pdf. Now, before you think this is all doom and gloom, I promise it's way more fascinating than it sounds. We're going to tackle questions like, what really happens when we die? Is it just lights out, or is there more to the story?
Yeah, that's something I think a lot of people wonder about. Like, is that really it?
Exactly. And then how does this ancient wisdom apply to how we live right now?
That's a great question. It's intriguing how yoga views death not as a full stop, but more like a comma in a much larger sentence. And to understand this perspective, I think we need to start by looking at how yoga understands the very makeup of a human being.
Okay, so the text lays out this idea of five sheaths of existence, like layers of an onion.
Yeah.
And it says that when we die, we don't actually lose all of those layers.
Right, it's not a total wipeout. The outermost layer, the physical body, or anamaya kosha, is what we're most familiar with. It's literally built from the food we eat, hence the name food body. But yoga says there's more to us than, what we see.
There's got to be, right?
Right.
So let's peel back those layers. We've got the manamaya kosha, the mental body, which includes our thoughts and emotions, that constant inner chatter.
Yeah, and this is where that mind-body connection comes in. What we think and feel directly impacts our physical state. That's the psychosomatic link. The idea that our mental states can manifest as physical symptoms.
Like, getting stressed and then getting a headache.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
then there's the pranamaya kosha, the energy body.
Hmm.
It's the life force, like the electricity that powers a light bulb.
Perfect analogy. This pranamaya kosha is super important because yoga suggests that death is basically this life force withdrawing from the body. But it's not like flipping a switch. It's more like a gradual dimming of the lights.
Intriguing. Okay, so then there's the Vijnanamaya kosha, which the text describes as an etheric body, a bridge between the physical and non-physical. It even hints that tapping into this layer can give us, profound insights into the cosmos.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting. The Vijnanamaya kosha challenges how we usually think about death as a complete ending. If this bridge exists, what happens to it when the physical body dies? Does our connection to the cosmos simply vanish?
Right, good question.
Yeah.
All right, last layer. The Anandamaya kosha, the bliss body, it's described as like experiencing pure bliss when connected to something beyond the physical. But it's not a thing itself.
Exactly. Think of it like joy. You can't hold joy in your hand, but you can feel it. The Annamaya kosha is the source of that experience, the deepest core of our being.
Okay, so we've got these five layers, and only the physical body and parts of the mental body are completely shed at death.
Right.
The others, including that mysterious Vijnanamaya kosha, remain.
Mm.
This is where it gets really mind-blowing because the text goes into the actual mechanics of how this leaving happens.
Right, and that's where the Panchavayas or Panchapranas come into play. These are five vital energies that govern different life processes, almost like specialized teams within the Pranamaya kosha, that energy body we were talking about.
Like little specialists.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's meet these teams. First, we've got Samanavayu, which the text says regulates body temperature and digestion. It even talks about Himalayan sadhus who can withstand freezing temperatures with hardly any clothes on. It's like they have an internal thermostat, thanks to their mastery of Samanavayu.
It's amazing, isn't it? What's fascinating is the link to the sun. Samanavayu draws energy from the sun, allowing these yogis to, go beyond relying on external sources of warmth. Imagine the possibilities if we could tap into that kind of internal power.
That would be amazing, being able to control your temperature. Okay, next is Pranavayu, which handles both breathing and thinking. The text even suggests you can notice subtle changes in your breath as you think different thoughts. Try it. Think of a vast ocean, then a towering mountain, then a fierce tiger. Notice anything. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah. It makes you wonder, what happens to our thoughts when pranavayu starts withdrawing at death? Do they just stop? Or do they transition to a different level of existence? It challenges the idea of death as a complete shutdown of consciousness.
Wow, yeah. Okay, now for Udana. This one's all about buoyancy, that feeling of lightness that counteracts gravity. Apparently, mastering this prana can lead to abilities like floating or even flying. It's also connected to communication, how easily we connect with others.
Interesting. What's interesting here is the connection to the moon and its cycles. Udana is especially linked to the feminine dimension of life. The text even suggests that the moon influences when the body truly comes to an end, adding another layer to how we understand death.
Wow. The moon, huh? Okay, next up is apanavayu, which manages our excretory system down to the cellular level. The text emphasizes the importance of yoga purification practices because a clean system leads to sharper senses and a clearer mind.
Right, it makes you think, if we're constantly clogging our systems, physically and mentally, how does that impact the dying process? It's like preparing for a long journey. You wouldn't set out with a broken down car and a trunk full of junk, right?
Yeah, no, you wouldn't.
Mm.
And finally, there's Vyanavayu, the weaver. This prana is what knits all our billions of cells together. Pretty impressive. The text mentions yogis whose bodies didn't decay for months after death because they retained so much Vyana prana. It's like their bodies were defying the usual laws of decomposition.
Isn't that wild? And here's the truly mind-blowing part. Mastering Vyanavayu could allow someone to leave their body at will, almost like stepping out of a suit. This isn't the goal of yoga, but rather a side effect of becoming less identified with the physical body. Imagine the sense of freedom that would come with that.
So we've got these 5 pranas, each with a specific role in keeping us alive. But the text makes it clear. Death isn't a sudden event, it's these pranas gradually leaving the body.
And understanding how they withdraw, the sequence, and how that manifests physically is key to grasping the yogic perspective on death. It's like a carefully choreographed exit, with each prana leaving the stage at a specific time.
But how does all this line up with modern definitions of death? We talk about brain activity and heartbeat stopping, but it sounds like yoga has a totally different perspective.
Yeah, you're right. The text points out that modern science focuses on the effects of death, not the underlying cause. They look at things like the cessation of breath, heartbeat, and brain waves, but yoga says those are just the outward signs of the prana's withdrawing.
You know, I actually had a funny experience with some brainwave researchers once, and based on their readings, they declared me either dead or brain dead. It just goes to show that even fancy technology can't fully grasp the complexity of this process.
That's a perfect illustration of how relying solely on external measures to define death can miss the bigger picture. It's like trying to understand the wind by observing the movement of leaves, but ignoring the wind itself. You're missing the driving force.
So if we can't rely on those usual markers, how does yoga define death?
The text describes it as a process, not a single event. It's about the pranas exiting the body in a specific sequence, each departure causing distinct physical changes.
Like a carefully planned exit strategy.
Exactly.
So what does this sequence look like? What happens as each prana departs?
Well, first to go is samana vayu, that internal thermostat we were talking about. As it exits, the body starts to cool down, usually within 21 to 24 minutes. This is one of the first signs that the process of death has begun.
Then comes pranavayu. As it withdraws, breathing and thought processes begin to fade. This can take anywhere from 48 to 90 minutes, which explains why traditional cremation often waits at least that long.
It suggests that even after breathing stops, there's still subtle activity happening, a lingering trace of the life force. Death isn't an instant off switch.
Then, between 6 and 12 hours after breath ceases, Udana departs. This is the prana responsible for buoyancy, so as it leaves, the body feels heavier, even though its actual weight hasn't changed. It's like gravity's pull suddenly intensifies.
It reminds us that these subtle energies are constantly working within us, even if we're not aware of them. We take them for granted until they begin to recede.
Next to exit, sometime between 8 and 18 hours after breathing stops, is apanavayu. As it recedes, sensory function fades. This explains why people sometimes report seeing dead bodies twitch or move slightly, which can be pretty freaky.
It underscores that death isn't a sudden lights out, but rather a gradual fading of different aspects of our being.
And finally, we have Vyanavayu, the last prana to depart. This can take 11 to 14 days or even longer. It's the preservative force, the glue that holds everything together.
Isn't it fascinating to think that even after the heart stops beating and the brain is no longer active, this subtle life force can linger, preserving the body for a period of time? It challenges our linear view of death as a single point in time.
So the takeaway here is that the yogic definition of death is much more nuanced than the simple alive or dead we usually think about.
Yeah.
It's a process, a journey of energy, not a destination. And that begs the question, where does that energy go? How does it leave?
That's what we'll explore next. The text delves into the role of the chakras in the process of death, describing them as gateways of departure.
Okay, chakras. I've heard the term before, but I'll admit I'm a bit fuzzy on the details.
Sure.
What are these chakras all about, and how do they relate to death?
Well, the text explains that there are 114 energy centers in the body, with 7 main ones running along the spine. And get this, the chakra through which the prana exits at death actually influences the quality of death and even future rebirths.
Hold on, so how we die can affect what happens after. That's a pretty wild concept. Tell me more about these chakra exit points and what they signify.
Okay, let's start with the Muladhara chakra, located at the base of the spine. Exiting through the chakra is usually associated with fear and considered a less desirable departure. However, even in this seemingly negative exit, there's potential. The text says that those who consciously leave through the Muladhara can develop extraordinary abilities. It's as if facing your fears head-on can unlock hidden strengths.
So even in a uh, less than ideal exit, there's a chance for something remarkable. It's not all doom and gloom down there in the basement of the chakra system.
Exactly. Now, if the prana exits through the Swadhisthana chakra, located in the genital region, the text suggests this can lead to amplified creativity in the next life. So artists and creators, take note. That creative spark might have something to do with how you transitioned in a past life.
So those drawn to art and creation, maybe that's a sign of a Swadhisthana exit in a previous life. Interesting. What about the other chakras?
Well, if the prana exits through the Manipura chakra, just below the navel, that's linked to strong leadership and organizational skills in the next life. This is the chakra of willpower in action.
Ah, so CEOs, generals, and master organizers. Maybe you've got a Manipura exit in your past. That makes you wonder if those tendencies we have in this life could be echoes of previous journeys.
Moving upward, we come to the Anahata chakra at the heart center. Exiting through this chakra is associated with artistic gifts, sensitivity, devotion, and even polymathy, which basically means being skilled in lots of different areas.
So the heart chakra is like the Renaissance person exit point, the multi-talented folks who excel in various fields. Pretty cool.
Now, exiting through the Vishuddhi chakra at the throat is considered pretty rare. The text says it grants incredible perception, a lack of attachment, and a fearless approach to life. This is the chakra of communication and self-expression.
So this is the chakra of those who speak truth to power, see through illusions, and live authentically. A pretty powerful exit point.
Yeah, it is. Moving higher still, we have the Agna chakra, located between the eyebrows, often called the third eye. Exiting through this point is more common than the Vishuddhi and is associated with enhanced intuition and spiritual insight.
So this is the chakra of the visionaries, the seers, those who can perceive beyond the ordinary. What about the final top-tier chakra?
That would be the Sahasrara chakra, located at the crown of the head. This is considered the ideal exit point, a death in full consciousness, a state of liberation from the cycle of rebirth.
Wow, exiting through the Sahasrara sounds amazing. Does that mean you just cease to exist?
That's a great question. It's not about ceasing to exist, but rather transcending the limits of individual consciousness. It's like merging with the vast ocean of pure awareness. The text doesn't give a definitive answer, which is part of what makes this whole exploration so captivating.
Right.
It leaves us with more questions than answers, inviting us to contemplate these mysteries ourselves.
This whole concept of chakras as exit points is mind-blowing. It suggests that how we live our lives, the qualities we cultivate, can actually shape our experience of death and even what comes after.
Right.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about how this yogic perspective views the very definition of death.
It really challenges us to think beyond the physical, doesn't it? This idea that our consciousness isn't just bound to the body, but might continue in some form, influenced by the energies we cultivate during life.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. So if the chakra exit point is so important, is it something we can actually control? Can we, choose our own adventure in the afterlife?
Well, the text doesn't give us step-by-step instructions, but it emphasizes that a life lived with awareness makes a conscious death more likely. It's not about obsessing over death, but rather about truly living, being present, mindful, and making choices that resonate with our deepest selves.
So basically, if we want to ace that final exam and graduate with honors from the school of life, we need to be present, engaged, and make choices that reflect who we truly are. No more coasting through on autopilot.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that the quality of our life force, our prana, is directly shaped by the quality of our awareness. If we're asleep at the wheel during life, we might find ourselves drifting unconsciously through death as well.
Makes sense. But even for the most mindful among us, death can still feel, scary. Are there any practices or techniques that can help make the transition less terrifying?
The text doesn't delve into specific techniques, but it highlights the importance of understanding the process itself. Fear often stems from the unknown. So, by shedding light on the mechanics of death, we can potentially lessen some of that fear.
It's like if you know what to expect, even if it's a bit unnerving, it's not going to catch you totally off guard. Knowledge is power, even when it comes to death.
Absolutely. And that knowledge can empower us to make choices that support a more conscious and peaceful transition. For example, understanding the chakras might inspire us to cultivate qualities associated with those higher exit points: compassion, creativity, spiritual insight. It's like packing for a journey. You want to bring things that will be useful and meaningful at your destination.
I love that analogy. It reframes the whole idea of preparing for death. It's not about morbidly dwelling on the end, but about consciously evolving, choosing experiences and qualities that we want to carry with us.
Precisely. It shifts the focus from fear and avoidance to conscious growth and preparation.
Okay, so we've talked about the five Shis, the pranas, the chakras, and how they all factor into the process of death. But there's still this big question lingering. What happens to that energy, that life force, after it leaves the body? Does it just dissipate, or is there something more?
That's where things get really intriguing. The text explains that when the physical body, anamaya kosha, and parts of the mental body, manamaya kosha, are shed, the other sheaths remain intact. It's like shedding an outer layer, but the core essence of who we are continues.
So it's not complete annihilation, more like a transformation, a shifting from one form to another.
Exactly. The text suggests that these remaining sheaths, carrying the imprint of our karma, will seek out another womb and manifest once again in the physical realm. This is the concept of rebirth, the cycle of life, death, and renewal.
So death is like a pause, a transition point in a much grander journey. It's not the end of the story, but like a turning of the page.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It emphasizes the interconnectedness of everything. The energy that animates us doesn't just disappear. It flows back into the cosmic dance, eventually finding its way back into physical form.
Wow, that's a pretty awe-inspiring perspective. It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? But what about those who achieve liberation, those who exit through the Sahasrara chakra? Do they also get caught up in this cycle of rebirth?
The text suggests that those who die consciously through the Sahasrara chakra are liberated from the cycle of rebirth. They've transcended the limitations of the physical form and merged with the cosmic consciousness.
So they've basically reached the final level of the video game. No more respawning necessary. They've achieved the ultimate freedom, merging with the infinite.
That's one way to think about it. It speaks to the transformative potential that exists within each of us.
This whole yogic perspective on death is incredibly complex and fascinating, but for those of us who aren't, yogis or mystics, how can we practically apply these teachings to our everyday lives? Is there a way to make this ancient wisdom relevant to our modern experience?
Absolutely. One of the key takeaways for me is the importance of cultivating awareness, both in life and in death. By understanding the processes at play, we can approach death with more understanding and less fear.
So it's about demystifying the process, making it less of a scary unknown and more of a natural transition. We can learn to face it with more courage and even a sense of curiosity.
Exactly. And that awareness can also guide our choices in life. If we grasp that the quality of our death is influenced by the quality of our life, we might be more motivated to make choices that nourish our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being.
It's like we're investing in our future selves, not just in this life, but potentially beyond as well. It's a powerful motivator to live with intention and make choices that align with our values.
Couldn't agree more. It's about aligning our actions with our highest aspirations, living a life that reflects our deepest truths.
But how do we even begin to cultivate that kind of awareness? It's so easy to get swept up in the busyness of everyday life and lose sight of the bigger picture.
You're right, it's a constant practice. The text doesn't offer specific techniques, but it highlights the transformative power of yogic practices. Yoga, in its various forms, is all about cultivating awareness, bringing harmony to body, mind, and spirit.
So maybe the first step is simply to explore these practices, see if they resonate with us. There's so many different styles and approaches. There's bound to be something out there that speaks to our individual needs.
Absolutely. There are countless paths to awareness, and it's about finding what works for you, what helps you connect with that inner stillness and clarity. It's like finding the key that unlocks the door to your own inner wisdom.
I love that. It's about unlocking our potential both in this life and beyond. But there's one more piece of this puzzle we haven't explored yet. Karma. We briefly touched on it earlier, but how does this concept of karma factor into the whole process of death? And can we actually do anything to influence our karmic balance sheet?
Ah, yes, karma, that cosmic principle of cause and effect. It's a concept that often sparks more questions than answers, but it's a vital part of the yogic understanding of life and death. And yes, the text does suggest that we have the power to shape our karmic path, even in the face of death.
Okay, I'm ready to dive deeper into the mysteries of karma. But before we unravel that thread, let's take a moment to reflect. What's standing out for you so far? What's sparking your curiosity? We'll be back in a flash to explore how karma plays into this fascinating yogic perspective on death and what it might mean for our own journeys. All right, deep divers, we're back, ready to tackle karma. It's one of those concepts that can feel a bit mysterious and maybe even a little, like, intimidating, you know?
Definitely.
So how does this invisible force play into the process of death? And can we actually do anything to influence it?
Well, the text describes karma as a blueprint imprinted on our various sheaths, shaping not just our physical and mental characteristics, but the whole trajectory of our lives, including death.
So it's like karma has this grand plan,
Yeah.
guiding us along a predetermined path, even beyond this physical life. Does that mean we're just puppets on a string, destined to play out a script we have no control over?
Not quite. While karma does set the stage, we're not just passive players. We have choices, actions we can take to create new karma and kind of shift the course of our journey. Think of it like navigating a river. The current represents our past karma, but we can steer the boat, making adjustments along the way.
Okay, that's a helpful image. But what about those times when life throws us a curveball, something totally unexpected and seemingly outside our control? Is that karma too?
That's where things get really interesting. The text doesn't explicitly say this, but it hints that our understanding of karma is often limited by our linear perception of time. What we see as a random event might be the result of actions from a past life, or even choices made on a subconscious level in this one. It's like those delayed reactions in chemistry. The effects aren't immediately apparent.
So it's not always a simple case of you did this, so this will happen to you. There's a bigger, more complex picture at play.
Exactly. There are layers of karmic influence we may not even be aware of, which is why it's such a complex concept to grasp. It operates on a level that goes beyond our usual way of thinking.
All right, so let's say we want to create good karma to ensure a smoother ride in this life and beyond. Is it all about donating to charity and rescuing kittens from trees?
While those actions are certainly positive, the text emphasizes that true karmic transformation comes from cultivating awareness, understanding our actions and their consequences. It's about acting with intention, recognizing that our choices have, a ripple effect.
So it's not just about what we do, but why we do it. Our motivations carry weight as well.
Absolutely. The text highlights that actions driven by selfish desires or harmful intentions generate negative karma, while those rooted in compassion, kindness, and a genuine desire to benefit others create positive karma. It's like planting seeds. We reap what we sow.
So if we want to cultivate a bountiful harvest of good karma, we need to sow those seeds of awareness, compassion, and mindful action. Makes sense. But this whole discussion about karma, it's pretty mind-bending. It makes you really consider the impact of your choices, not just on yourself, but on the world around you.
And that's the power of this yogic perspective. It encourages us to move beyond a superficial understanding of life and death and to engage with these profound mysteries on a deeper level. It invites us to become conscious creators of our own destiny, both in this life and beyond.
Well, deep divers, we've reached the end of our journey into the yogic perspective on life, death, and what might lie beyond. We've explored the five sheaths, the dance of the pranas, the chakras as gateways of departure, and the intricate workings of karma. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. And while this particular deep dive is ending, the exploration doesn't have to stop here.
Exactly. This yogic perspective doesn't give us all the answers, but it opens up a whole new way of looking at things. It invites us to keep asking questions, to delve deeper into our own experiences, and explore the mysteries of life and death for ourselves.
You know what I find most inspiring is that it empowers us to take an active role in shaping our journey, not just in this life, but potentially in lives to come. It's a call to live with intention, to cultivate awareness, and to embrace the transformative potential that exists within each of us.
So deep divers, as you go about your day, carry these teachings with you. Reflect on what resonated with you, what sparked your curiosity. Maybe this deep dive has inspired you to explore yogic practices, or perhaps it's ignited a fascination with karma and the subtle energies that shape our lives. Whatever it may be, embrace that curiosity and continue the exploration. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.